Good afternoon and most welcome to 1422 of the Heidegger series. And we will continue with chapter 5 of the book by Stephen M. Rosen, The Self-Evolving Cosmos. I mentioned last time that Rosen have found an excellent entry into quantum mechanics. It's a way that makes it possible to traverse the obstacles, because in reality, as often described by quantum physicists, quantum mechanics is a venture in specific quantum mechanical mathematics and experimentation. It defies understanding in regular language. And also, as we earlier discussed, it is before language. In a most definite sense. I need to put a pause here. Sorry, I was just reminding myself of charging a mobile phone. Yes, that's the technological difficulties of modern man. He has a unique way of showing things that cannot be talked about. Things that also lie before. It is before observation or definition. Implicit is what you could call it, whereas all explanations in the end are explicit. Stephen M. Rosen is also addressing something that has not been addressed ever in philosophy until the famous conference in Solvay in Brussels of 1927, and then expounded by philosophers of rank like Heidegger, Jacques Derrida, Merleau-Ponty, a few who wanted us to discover a hidden feature in our everyday thinking and language. It is mainly, strictly, not about some otherworldly transcendental conception of reality these philosophers and quantum mechanics is pointing to. They are pointing to the everyday lived experience. It goes to the things themselves in an almost Husserlian way, Husserlian after Edmund Husserl, the founder of Phenomenology, one of the most famed phenomenologists ever. And this is most definitely to the things themselves, or even to the before of the establishment. I showed in the previous part of this lecture the line and the square. Those are what perception is in the Newtonian paradigm. They are the essences, or arche, if you like. And in honest, I can tell, introvertedly and exogenous or endogenous, what I feel here is I'm beginning to understand that I was mistaken. Ever so slightly. I really want to stress slightly. You realize the misunderstanding is not what we in regular language call grave. It almost in every case amounts to the same verbal description. But oddly enough, it still makes an incredible difference. This is the hidden gem, if you like, of quantum mechanics. In a way, it reminds me, when reading different authors already from the start, my first one was Arkady Plotnitsky, how he used Jacques Derrida and Georges Bataille to ease the conversion and the understanding of quantum mechanics. And then after that, a whole array of helpers. But it is still difficult. It's such a evidently true thing, so even saying it wouldn't make any sense. It doesn't sound sane even. If I say to someone that the hidden part of a cube, well, this is a book, not really a cube, but it has 6 sides still, that the hidden part of the book is constitutive of the book as a cube. People who just never heard that before, or rather never experienced that before, which I think is a bit harder to overcome. It is tough to question your own experience. And this is actually a philosophical dilemma that's been brought up many times. What do people say? What does the philosophers of thought say? What would David Hume say, the Scottish philosopher of the mind? He would say, perception or experience itself, that's foundational. What would René Descartes say? Well, we know, of course, after this long series of 422 episodes, experience is where he started. To see something different in experience would be impossible, unfathomable. Important traces or leads, to use a detective novel term. What trace do we have? What lead? Have been the inevitable turn into secularism, denial of the soul, denial of free will, that was seen from beginning of, or rather mid-19th century, or 17th, 18th century, sorry. And how that happened without these people being incommunicados or being destined to become secular or having an ideology that could be called materialism. No, it's just the opposite. Materialism in its modern format is done by many people without connection to each other. It is a bit like they are investigating experience itself. Many men started out pious, convinced of the soul, like an old cloth that was still hanging on one's shoulder. And they sort of discover, oh, I can take it off. It's separable. And of course, this is maybe the strongest argument for denial of consciousness and free will and all those other things. That people without connection, just by being meticulous, careful, rational, honest, I would say. The French philosopher of nature, D'Holbach, is most definitely an honest man. They all come to the same conclusion. That's pretty convincing, I would say. A lot of people coming to the same conclusion without entering into contact with each other or having read the same books. Well, I think now, after going into chapter 5, what they did share what they could not talk about, their experience. And experience itself is what we need to go in to look at. Now, you cannot really question experience in the same way you question your views. Imagine I have a very strong conviction that the capital of Romania is called Budapest. I heard the other day. I can question that conception. I can question my ideology that I think alcohol should be sold in regular stores in Sweden. And question that view. That could lead to me changing that view or reinforcing it. We don't even have any particular good words for experience in Sweden. There's an old one I really liked and was used by Edvard de Bono called varseblivning. Pretty close to the case. Du blir varse. It comes to your attention, connected to your attention. You are not being told. Du blir varse. I would say I build up three dimensions by adding the line together with the area to make up a cube or whatever object in what I, until recently, it's a matter of weeks, consider to be space. But as the good Ian McGilchrist says, space is not a representation of the left hemisphere. It is real depth. And that made me realize that the line, the square, together making up the cube is a representation. In the Lemminskate, we also come to the understanding that movement is inherent in what we usually call stillness. And that movement and stillness are not separable. Just like time and existence are not separable. They are together. That is what can make them different. There is here no nullification, to use the term by Rodolphe Gasquet. It's an expansion. It's more for everyone. You keep all the old understanding, you never have to get rid of the line and the area. But you see that there is a deeper relation going on that gives real depth to the world. And I start to remember when I was younger a different experience of the world with depth. And that experience later was replaced by a less rewarding, more sterile, artificial depth that feels glued on to a two-dimensional reality. In the end, you start thinking, when reading Rosen's chapter 5, how, in God's name, sorry to mention the Almighty, could it happen that two dimensions can build up depth? 1 plus 2 makes depth. It makes zero sense. And put on top of that, it is extremely practical to do that, which is quite another animal altogether. And I think that's an indication that practicality has led us to go over to that way of limiting depth, because 3 dimensions are what 3-dimension represented is, but so much more. It is not definable what it is, a priori, in advance, before the fact. It comes into being, at presencing, at the same time. Therefore, it is strictly not separable. Being alive is having time. But we have a few minutes left. Having time is being able to go into the different factions of reality. And you become less tensed. That's another hint. Why is it that we modern people tense so much? Why don't we stay balanced? Why do we let tics and stressful activities obstruct our thinking, making it, I would say, almost mechanically linear, making it a repetition, a representation? That is in itself a sort of slight stress. It's a friction in the more widened and open experience of depth. The Lemin's gate and the Klein bottle that we have touched only briefly, which opens up to an understanding where your indigenous, endogenous part, it's participatory. It's not outside the universe, it is smack in the lived world. And you are not a disembodied intellect flowing around in a real world, or a world that is hierarchically more real, more prioritized, which makes you secondary, derived thing in reality. It rids you of free will, it rids you of consciousness, rids you of higher authority. None of these things actually comes from the truer sense of space, the bigger picture, if you want. Maybe there's a comment of Kalle here. This is the wireless thing. I will help you with that one.
I will only make a quick question. So you can think about this. So we in Western languages use the slash, like man / woman, white / black, etc., etc. Do you have any idea how the Japanese do this? Because this is a dichotomy. How will we overcome that dichotomy? I put you on the spot. But this is, we have the dichotomies in our language, so to say, and we need to work on them. We could say man and woman, one way in English perhaps. So I give it back to you. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, it's this one. Well, I cannot answer that question on the spot, but I can give maybe an indication where the answer can be found. The most important distinction in language is, of course, the one speaker and speakee, if you want, the one I am addressing, me, you. That I would say that is pretty foundational in all conversation. In Japanese, there is a word omae that covers both of them, or one of them, or neither of them. It seems to be this superposition or limbo state, and they never want to have a specification that could actually derive it of its meaning. The unspecificity of that word is important. If you break it down and say, it is you, it is me, will no longer work. And they did not like when I tried to do that. There is no you, me, this particular thing. That is sort of a slash between you and me. Those things, I think they need to be seen as completely different, but also the same. And from singularity comes plurality. How true isn't that? And exclusion, as I've been doing with the dimensions, leads to less. I wouldn't say it absolutely wrong, but you definitely get less understanding. You limit it because you are in on it. You are in on it, evaluating what is possible. This is a short lecture, and I say thank you very much. I will make an important phone call in 10 minutes here. Wish me luck, and have a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.